and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Welcome to the Author Roundup. I'm Jenny, and today's episode is all about courage, kindness, and finding the bright side, even when life feels a little uncertain. Imagine stepping into a brand new home, surrounded by unfamiliar sights and sounds. It can feel a little scary, right? That's exactly how Zeus, a spirited rescue terrier, feels when he embarks on his own big move. At first, he's unsure about his new surroundings, but with a little help from positive thinking, he soon learns to turn uncertainty into excitement, fear into resilience, and change into a grand adventure. And behind this delightful story is someone who knows a thing or two about navigating life's transitions. Our guest is a licensed clinical psychologist with experience working in schools, the military, and even hosting award winning mental health radio shows. She has worked with children and families worldwide, helping them build resilience through change. Throughout her career, she's dedicated herself to supporting kids and families as they adapt to life's unexpected twists. Here to talk about her book, Zeus's Great Adventure, A Tale of Resilience and Positive Thinking, please welcome Dr. Eve Weber. Hi, Dr. Eve. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you for that introduction, Jenny. I appreciate it. I appreciate those words.
Excited to have this conversation with you. So, you had a book, or you have a book that recently came out just a few months ago. Tell
Right.
us about your book, Zeus's Great Adventure.
Zeus's Great Adventure the book itself is a heartfelt adventure. It's a children's book about a rescue puppy who faces challenges in adapting to his new environments, new surroundings after moving and integrating. Um, Through his journey, he learns to overcome fear and uncertainty using tools like positive thinking, and he develops resilience along the way. He learns
Mhm.
that bounce back, how to bounce back after a change. Um, the story serves as a guide not just for military children, which is Zeus was a military dog, but it's
Mhm.
also for any children, anybody who's developing, adults developing big challenges and change, offering those tools and encouragement to navigate those transitions with confidence.
Okay, so having that as the story for the book, what inspired the idea for this book?
Because we were a military family ourselves, we endured a lot of change, our children and us, and as well as our dogs as part of the family. So the idea came from our own our own experience and
Mhm.
my work too with helping people through relocations and change as a school teacher and learning to help students uh, acclimate to a new classroom, as a special education supervisor, getting special education children the needs, the tools to meet their needs. Many jobs in my background can illustrate why change is part of our life. All of us experience it at sometimes minimal and small changes and sometimes seemingly insurmountable changes. But it's how we approach that change, how we think about that change is so important and so integral to our adaptability. Um, so the Zeus's story, it's a real life story. It's
Mhm.
paired with the challenges of also everybody else, children, adults. So it's
Yes.
I used Zeus as the hopefully the relatable that and and the innocent and the vulnerable that shows how he approached the changes and the challenges that he faced.
Mhm. I agree. A lot of us can relate to what Zeus went through. So Zeus's story revolves around resilience and also positive thinking. Why did you choose to explore these themes? And it's through the eyes of a rescue puppy. So that's very interesting to me.
Because he was such, using uh, pets or animals,
Mhm,
I think is relatable to children. They can see themselves sometimes through their pet's eyes, or see the world sometimes as that comfort animal and how they feel vulnerable, like sometimes like a dog or a cat or something that has more vulnerability. And
mhm.
it gives them power to be able to see through the vulnerable too, because they sometimes feel that vulnerability also. I say children, we all feel that vulnerability at different times. So using Zeus gives it a way to we can kind of separate ourselves and see him as a story, and then we can see ourselves through the story. So
Mm,
we can detach from it, but then we can also begin to relate as we see the struggles. So his
I,
story
s-
becomes our story.
I see. All right. You talk about, the story being able to detach from Zeus since it's a dog and all that, and still being able to
Right.
connect to him, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I think that's something that's very beautiful in the book. How did you do that? And what makes it so important to present it that way?
As we were talking about this, I think about even the illustrations. Honestly, the story itself kind of flowed, but the illustrations, how do you see that? How does that come about? How do you feel it? And there's one, I think of the one there's two different times. I have Zeus looking out the window on a plane, and he's looking out to, the future. Where am I going? And feeling that uncertainty as you're getting ready to approach a new change. And then at the end, where you can see the different on his face, on his affect, as he's looking out towards, it was in Hawaii, Kualoa Range. He could see the mountains and the beach on one side, and he had that sense of peace. So seeing, seeing that change, that anxiety, that anticipation, it changes from anxiety to anticipation to looking forward and then to finding peace. That's cognitive behavioral processing. It's
Mm,
that thought, choosing the thoughts to be where you want to be, to feel what you want to feel.
I see. So your book also talks about positive thinking. It's a central idea for the book, right? So can you explain
Yes.
what that means and how it helps Zeus adapt? Well, not just Zeus, but also everyone who is in the same situation.
So positive thinking it's a playful take on the cognitive behavioral therapy, using it more adaptable, using it as more friendly for people to understand and simplifying it. It's a broad concept, and simplifying it was important. Sometimes people don't want to go through all the cognitive distortions and trying to remember them and trying to learn how to reframe them. So the basic concept of CBT, cognitive behavioral training, came about from different sources that I experienced and learned from. Dr. Daniel Amen with a Captain Snout about the automatic negative thoughts and the ants and how the anteater sucks up the ants and those not negative thoughts. So
Mm,
from that concept, I wanted to learn more. So I got David Burns's book. Dr. David Burns is a psychiatrist out of California who wrote the Feeling Good Handbook, which is great for adults, but how to make that more user friendly for children, how to simplify it so where even the adults would use it. So Dr. Edmund Newhouse with Harvard University, that I had the honor to work with, um, used the triangle. And in simplifying it, he said the triangle was the thought, the feeling, and what you do and how you react to a situation. And using that concept, it got me thinking, okay, this is going to be simplify it for me to work with children. And when I worked with foster children in Hawaii, I used that concept more, helping them process what is it that I'm thinking? Here's a situation I have no power over, a situation I can't change. But what I
Mhm.
can change, what I do have power over, is my thought. How can I change that thought to fit where I want to be and how I react? So it's
I see.
simplifying it. Like Thoreau said, simplify, simplify, keeping
Yes,
it
and
down to the important points.
mhm. Making it easier for people, or in this case, like kids, since this is initially for kids, to
Right.
understand how they can do positive thinking, right? Because it's not like you've said, it's not as easy as just thinking about good thoughts, thinking about positive thoughts. Like, how do you get
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. It's looking at the situation, something happens, our
Mhm.
automatic, is our that guttural reaction, anxiety, oh my
Yes.
gosh, I'm gonna have to move. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna miss my friends. I'm gonna my bed that I'm used to, I'm gonna have to change.
Yeah.
And how do I handle that? Well, if I can say to myself, oh my gosh, this is going to be exciting. This is such a change. I'm looking forward to it. New friends, new place, new smells, new foods. How
Mhm.
exciting. If I can if I can think that differently, if I can make myself aware of what I'm thinking that's creating those feelings, I can change my thinking to where I want it to be. In every mirror of our house, I have choice and perspective. And the
Mm.
choice in the perspective is empowering. It gives me power every morning when I look in the mirror that I choose how I see this day. I choose how I want to feel. Now, situations may come up that's going to kind of knock that off a little bit. And then I'm going to have to remind myself I choose how I see it. It's practiced effect. The more you
Mm.
do it, the easier it becomes.
Mm. Okay. So in the book, one of the things that is quite difficult for Zeus, or the struggle that Zeus had to go through, is moving to a new home, right? So it was
Right,
scary.
right.
It can be scary too for children. So how did you make Zeus's emotions feel real and relatable to young readers?
Because it's interesting, animals are not that different from us. They will show emotions. They can
Mm.
show when they're afraid, they hear lightning and thunder and they'll shake, or they'll get ready to go to the doctor, the veterinarian, and they'll shake and they'll be nervous about it. And what do we do for them? How do we soothe them? Do we just take them anyway? We try to calm them. We talk to them in a low voice, a soft voice. We help
Mm.
them see it differently. If we're nervous about it, if we're anxious about it, they will be too. The more anxious that we are as their caregivers. And
Mm.
that's why I'm jumping the gun. That's why I have the message to the parents at the end, because as their
Mhm.
caregivers, whether it's a parent or, um, a guardian or just an adult that is working with a child, it's important
Mhm.
how we teach it, how we emulate it, how
Mhm.
we are also when we are with them. Uh, Part of my research that I did on the relocation of a military adolescent was I was surprised with the results from the research because I discovered that it was more how the parents were feeling about a relocation that had an effect on the children. The more comfortable the parent felt about it, the more comfortable the children felt about it. And so it wasn't really just the child and how they were reacting. It was
Mm.
how the parent was reacting. It's like they talk about using your cell phones now. If the parent's on their cell phone all the time, what are the kids going to do?
Right.
They're going to be on their cell phones all the time too. So
Mhm.
that natural tendency that we have in teaching our children um, and ourselves is what we do. And that's part of that triangle. What I'm doing is going to create what I'm thinking and is going to create a reaction.
I
Back to
see.
the thought. What am I thinking?
So parents really play a big role in all of this.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, parents, adults, guardians, whoever that person you look up to is.
So we're talking about kids, and they
Right,
often struggle with changes that are beyond their control. Like in your example, it's moving to another place, moving to a new
right.
home. That's beyond their control, right? They don't have
That's
any control over that. It's the parents who would, who would decide on those things.
right.
So the book encourages a shift in perspective to be able to, um, cope with what's going on, for the children to cope. So how can parents help reinforce this, since you said that they have a big role in what their kids are going through?
Being aware, being environment, I love it. My daughter always says, read the room. So it's reading the room. How are the children reacting?
Mm,
How are they?
mm,
In one part of the book, she notices that Zeus seemed anxious.
mm,
So Mia takes Zeus aside at the airport and she teaches him about positive thinking, that alternative thinking. How can I look at this differently? Do I have something I really need to be that anxious about? A little anxiety is okay, it gives us energy. But too much anxiety is going to keep
right.
us from doing something. So if or will abreact. It
Mm,
becomes a disorder when it starts interfering in our life. So as long as I'm able to have that little bit of anxiety, but I'm coping, I'm making it through it, and that's what the as parents, guardians, adults is reading the room, watching the child, see how they're reacting and how they're responding. If they're responding in an abreactive way, take that time. Take that time to teach them positive thinking, alternative thinking. What's another way I can see this?
So they should be very aware of what's going on, like how their kids are doing, how their kids are reacting to the changes that are going on
Right.
around, be observant and all that. Do you have some strategies for parents or educators to share so that they can encourage the mindset of, changing the perspective and having positive thinking with the children or for the children?
I think that from my past experience, when we lived in Japan, there was a classroom that I went into. The teacher said the kids were just so busy, and then it would just seem like every child in the classroom had attention problems or anxiety. And so I went into the classroom. The best thing to do initially is just observe what's going on, what's the story, reading the room, what's happening. I noticed that there was a lot going on in the room. There were a lot of posters and pictures and stuff hanging down and things on the desk, and it was a busy place. And so my first recommendation is make it less busy, help them kind of narrow down their focus too. We all have a tendency to be all out here. And I think at the beginning, I told you I wanted to be with you when we spoke. I wanted to be in the moment. And I think that being able to see all of that happening, all that chaos happening, and be able to bring it down to the important part and being in the moment, being with the child and saying, talk to me,
Mhm.
being able to listen about what those anxieties and may be and how to address them.
That's something that's very, I'm not saying it's easy, but you know, it's something that the parents should be aware that they need to do when something like this is happening to their kids or to their children, right? Just
Yeah, it's helpful. Yeah, I hate using the word should because that sounds like a mandate or an edict, so it's it's more of, if the child is abreacting, it's important to notice and
Mhm.
helpful to listen to them. That's
Okay.
that's a little bit of that coaching in there too.
So the parents need to be able to do that, but what can you recommend if the parents are somehow going through the same thing?
Right.
Since you said that, it can happen not just to kids, but also
Yeah.
to adults. So what if the parents are also struggling with the changes that are going on and they have their kids to worry about? So what do you recommend they do?
It's awareness. One thing I learned from teaching is that I learned more from teaching than I did from when I was in the classroom. I learned, I feel like my students taught me more than I've taught them. I feel like frequently when I would meet with clients in my therapy office, that I learned much from them by listening. It's
Mhm.
just being in the moment, listening, and then reframing. How can I see this differently? This isn't working. How can I see
Mm.
this differently? Choice and perspective. What am I choosing? So even the parent being able to step back, notice the child, teaching the child the process, they'll gain from it themselves.
Mm. I see. So they're somehow going through healing themselves if they also help out, their kids and all that, and help them
Yeah.
cope with the changes that are going on.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so that's very interesting. And I'm sure that's helpful because it's not just always the kids. It's not just the kids. It can also be the parents that will go through
Right.
coping with the changes. And sometimes it's not easy for them to help their kids if they have their own struggles to think of or to worry about.
That's why I feel this book is for both. It's
Y-
written for children,
Yes.
but that's why the message is in there for the parents or the caregiver too, is
Y-
to help to understand and so they can understand how to do that transition themselves.
Mhm.
It's they when they talk about when you're getting ready to, the when the oxygen drops down, they always say put it on yourself first.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
so the message is for the self first and then
Mm.
teach it to the kids.
Right. So you do have a section in your book that's called a note for parents or note for parents.
Right.
Yeah. So it
Yes.
talks about perspective and emotional resilience, right? So why was it
Right.
important for you to include this section? So this time you're talking
Yeah.
to the parents and the guardians. So um, what did you include there, and why did you feel that it's very important for you to talk to the parents this time?
The message couldn't get across by itself. And I feel like, the whole children are our future. They truly are. So
Yes.
if we can teach this to them young, they can get the message so much easier than us as adults who have our pathways are so much deeper in our brain. Um,
Hmm.
I'm also a neuropsychologist. So those pathways get really deep. Our ruts are deep in our brain and how we get used to things. If we've had anxiety before, boy, we can really feel anxiety again because we get the practiced effect for it too. The more we practice anxiety, the better we are at being really anxious people. So if I don't want to be that anxious person, what do I need to practice? I need to practice alternative thinking. I need to practice seeing things how I choose to see them. It's strengthening that, practicing that, and it's important for them to teach it to their kids themselves, to model it for their children that
Mhm.
they're responsible for. If we could teach it to them young, we'll have less problems with that alternative thinking as they get older. Their ruts won't be quite as deep.
Mhm. Right. So on the surface, this story just seems your like any other children's book. But now that we're talking about it, I'm seeing that there are a lot of layers to it.
Yes. And
Okay.
it's a very short. I really worked hard on trying to make this as simple as possible. In fact, as my husband and I were deployed and we came across this whole idea of Zeus as we watched him having to go through all these different changes and we kept taking him, from Pensacola, Florida to DC to Hawaii to Okinawa, and our daughter kept him when we were deployed. So we talked about, we think it's hard on us. How is it for Zeus? So
Correct.
it kind of helped us to not focus so much on ourselves, but to consider what everyone else was going through too during this deployment and change that we were experiencing. Fortunately, we were able to be deployed together, not at the
Mhm.
same location, but together. So that's where the origin of Zeus came about. Zeus's Great Adventure, because it was.
I see. So let's talk about your experience as an author this time, Dr. Eve. How long did it take you to complete your book? So you said you tried to keep it as short as possible, but I'm sure it's not as easy as it seems. Like even though you tried to make it short, but there's a lot of work that went to it. Can you share with us any anecdotes about your writing experience?
The first story was the full story, all the details and full sentences and everything else. And I thought I want to make it more simple. I need to simplify. I
Mhm.
I love, as an English teacher, I love teaching Walden. So I kept thinking to myself, simplify, simplify. So I thought, okay, I thought, well, what would Dr. Zeus do? You know, and I thought, well, he'd keep it simple and it'd be fun and it'd be rhyming. So then I came up with the concept of let's make it a rhyme. Let's make it fun. Let's make
Mhm.
it a story of transition. And so hence the story ended up becoming even shorter. I had this
Mhm.
long children's story written first, and then it became a little rhyming story because I thought simplify. But with that, I knew I needed to put in that message to the parents. And so then I also spend a lot of time on how to simplify that message. So the
Mhm.
results are the note to the parents and also the triangle. I couldn't do it without putting that triangle and choice and perspective because I feel like those are the nuts and bolts of cognitive behavioral training.
Mhm. It just has to be there, right?
It, it did. I couldn't do it without it.
Mm. So can you give us an estimate of how long it took? Like probably months or perhaps years?
You know, I my husband had this amazing psychiatrist that he worked with in his training. My husband's a psychiatrist. But he worked with a psychiatrist who said, you start writing long before you sit down and to the computer or pen to paper.
Mm.
The concept started when we were deployed in 20 2010, 2010 was when we were
Mhm.
deployed. And we had Zeus for so much earlier than that, and so it's been in the process for quite some time. When I sat down, I was in a cabin in the woods in Southern Virginia, and it was
Mhm.
snowing outside, and I was like, "If not now, when?"
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's when I sat down and actually put it in paper, and it took me 3 months or
Wow.
less, or less. But
Okay.
writing
But
it, the process was much longer than that.
oh, yeah, because it has to start with a concept and then you have
Yes.
to think about how you're going to present it and all that. Yeah, I could just imagine how difficult it was. So, writing is not all fun and not all challenging. So, it's a little bit of both, right? Tell us
Yes,
about the
absolutely.
fun part in your experience as an author and the challenging part as well. So, what was fun and what was challenging?
Oh, the fun part. I love this. Our daughters, poor things, I would send them my samples on a regular basis and I'd wait for their feedback. And I thought, am I just looking too much for approval? And I thought, no, I'm looking for feedback. It's
Yeah.
it's I didn't do it alone. And so it's not just my story. It's our story. And their feedback was important to me.
Mm,
And
I see.
so
So,
that was the fun part is listening to how their feedback and what they said about, the names and this places we went and the illustrations. And so I received a lot of support throughout the process.
wow. Okay. And the challenging part, what's the challenging uh parts that you have to go through or you had to go through?
Just putting it down on paper and then sending it in and waiting, is it going to be accepted? Did they think that that's something they would have, the publishers would want to take on? Even though I was self-published, you still have to try to get someone to, to market it for you and to sell it for you and to help you put it together. And then finding where to help, get the help from. And
Mhm.
then the illustrations, oh my goodness, how do I take this visual that I have and who's going to help me put it, especially for children's book, because so much of it is visual. And so
Right.
finding that person who can help understand my vision.
Mm.
And she did it beautifully. Just, I was amazed. So it was, yes. See, I'm getting anxiety a little bit myself.
So it's not all fun, but it was well worth it, right?
It was that alternative perspective. It was fun to see the results too. And when it came out, being able to see it all put together, that was an amazing part to me. It's like when you see it come into fruition.
Mm. Right. So it's been out for a few months now, and a lot of people have already read it. So, have you had feedback already about your book? Like, perhaps you can share with us one or two feedback that had the most impact on you.
Um, 2 of them. One was a military family, and, where they almost took it as the model for transition as they were gonna be using it, and they with their child and how they help process the change. So that was my ideal. The second was, a friend had come up and told me that over the holidays that the whole family got together, and they have many children in the family, and they read the whole book to the children. And then
Oh,
the parents had read the note to the parents, and then they tried to explain that to the children. So it was just like, "Really? Y'all used it for that?" And so it was very flattering that they had spent the time and the effort, and as I told you when we were talking initially, that, if I sell it to one person, if one person buys the book or listens to us talking and it makes a
mhm,
difference to them, if they're able to use that alternative thinking and choosing that perspective, then I accomplished my goal. That's what my intent is to do, is to just, if it takes one or two or three or many, the the more that it helps, the more I've accomplished.
mhm. Must have felt amazing knowing that these people were able to connect to the message of your book because that's why you wanted to write it in the first place, right? Like you just
Yeah,
want to help other people. So that must have been amazing for you.
that power of positive thinking, it's real.
Right. I see. So, what advice could you give this time to someone who is just working on his or her first book?
I think if you go into it thinking you're going to make a lot of money, that's that's probably should not be your objective. Telling your story should be, is best to be. I avoid the word should. You may notice because the word should is it's a negative thought, because then it's a mandatory thing that
Mhm,
you have to do this. That
mhm,
creates anxiety. So it's not that you should, but it's more helpful if you're
mhm,
able to see it as, I'm getting my story down, as I'm beginning to work on my father's story of being a cowboy on the ranch. It's whether anybody ever buys the book doesn't really matter. It's getting the story out there, getting it on paper. We have so many stories in our mind. It's putting it down on paper is what makes the difference, whether anybody ever reads it or not. I mean, how many movies that are in the vault that we never see, but it was important for them to tell that story.
So it's more of asking yourself, what's the purpose of writing this book? And
Yeah,
like instead of, like you've said, looking at what you're going to get out of it, like,
yeah,
are you going to sell the book or are you going to make money out of it?
yeah.
But this time it's more of you getting that purpose for writing the book. And I think you've done that a lot of times already,
Thank you. Thank
getting
you.
all these feedback about how they were able to connect with the message of your book. So now that, it's been out for a few months and we've talked earlier, I've said that the real work comes in, in promoting the book and all that. What are your goals
Okay.
for your book this time, like professional and personal goals for your book?
Um, Professional is if there's some way I can continue
Mm.
that putting that message, specifically about positive thinking. That was one of my main objectives, is being able to spread that. I've spent too many years learning it that I could not. I I had that drive to share it, to tell as many people as would listen about that message. Um, my future goals would be to uh, get my father's message out with his stories, his anecdotes. Oh my goodness, some of them are so funny. So it's a different methodology. However, it's still telling a story. And life lessons, listening to other people's stories. One thing I have found out, being a provider, is I learned so much, as I said before, from the people I meet, and their stories. And we all have a story. We've all had the good, the bad, and the ugly. Um, so sometimes it's that catharsis effect of getting the story out. Even if nobody else reads it, you will.
So it helps you as well as an author, like just
Yeah.
writing it is somehow very helpful to the author as well, right?
Therapeutic, you could say.
Okay, so do you see Zeus having more challenges in the future, perhaps tackling new challenges or going on new adventures this time?
Well, Zeus was a family member, and he I had other siblings, and so it could be Spartacus's story, who was also a rescue of ours from Hawaii. I mean, from Okinawa, uh, who was a Cavalier, King Charles. Adorable, but very strong in his own way, and definitely a character. Then we also had Hermes, who is a little rescue. He's a Yorkie. In fact, he's right here. But and so there's his story, and there's also the story from Apollo, who's over here, and and there's also Athena's story. There, because we are supporting positivity in our family, each of them has their story to tell.
Mhm.
And could it be Zeus's story? Which, yes, he had many different adventures, but could it be another one's? Yes. So we will wait and see where it leads to next.
Wow, so that's exciting. I mean, you talk about working on the book about your dad and also the possibility of writing about the adventures of the other dogs and perhaps
Yes.
Zeus as well. So there's a lot to look forward to. We're so
In fact,
excited.
the I think Apollo and Hermes and Athena were all illustrated in the book. When Zeus was playing on the beach, the
Oh,
other
yeah.
dogs that are there that he's playing with are the other dogs of the family. Uh,
Okay. That's interesting. All right. So, Dr. Eve, if you can just have or give just one final message to our viewers and listeners, if there's one key takeaway from your book, what would it be?
that's an easy one. Choice and perspective. Choose how you see things.
That's beautiful. Would you like to invite them to get a copy of your book?
Absolutely. Um, I'm gonna grab it. I know you said that they're going to show a picture of it, but this is it.
Mm,
And this is where Zeus at the near the end of the book is looking out, and you can tell on his face that he's at peace. So
okay, so,
I believe you can get it online. It's also available on Amazon too.
right. And you have a website for this book, right? Please invite them to
I
visit the website.
I do. And of course, the website is positivity.me.
Okay, so I'm sure everyone can find more information about you there and also
Yes,
get in touch with you if they would like to give you feedback, direct feedback about your book or about anything. If they would like to
I'd love
invite you
that.
for talks, perhaps they can do that, right?
I would love that. Yes. And
Okay, so,
there's I will also be publishing putting my research to kind of illustrate why I believe in the power of alternative thinking and why it's so important for the parents to emulate it
mm,
for their children.
mhm. I'm looking forward to that. I think I've mentioned it earlier that I would want to see that. So I make a note that I should go back to your website and check that later on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, Zoo's Grand Adventure is ready to inspire readers everywhere. So Dr. Eve's insights remind us that resilience starts young. And Zeus's Great Adventure is the perfect way to introduce that lesson to children. So, if you'd like to bring this inspiring story into your home, please grab a copy of Dr. Eve Weber's Zeus's Great Adventure, A Tale of Resilience and Positive Thinking. So, you can find it in paperback, hardback, and ebook at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Archway Publishing's online bookstore, and other major booksellers. So, Dr. Eve, thank you so much for sharing Luce's journey with us. And of course, the
Thank you,
lessons of
Jenny.
resilience, courage, and positive thinking.
Thank you,
So,
Jenny.
to all our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Author Roundup. See you next time.